Or when they release a new Newsroom season.
Oh, please don't. Please do not.
You don't think that they're going to do that with the Trump era?
I do not think they're going to do that.
You never know.
I would watch it. I'm goofing. I would watch it. I would really.
Like Will's got a kid now, and like the kid is like a white supremacist.
Whoa! I love it. Yeah, that is kind of accurate though. And he's like learning to, because you gotta love your kid,
right?
But he's just young enough. Oh man! And then like Jim is now the CEO of Newsnight.
Jim's like, we've got to get used to calling him son.
Yeah, we have Jim. Jim is like the weird like liberal Trump supporter. They have an episode about Kanye's tweets they don't. They have like a Neil plot about Kanye's tweets.
Yeah, Neil's like talking about how it's a big deal or something.
And they're like, Neil, shut up. Neil is still the IT guy despite being the
Facebook thing.
Yeah, honestly.
Oh
yeah, they could have an episode on the Facebook trial.
And Will's like, I don't use Facebook. I don't post.
I don't post on Facebook.
In the second episode, there's a line where Will's like, he was like, I'm enjoying our post-show drinks less and less each time, or something like that.
And really, each word just...
That's really good.
Post-show drinks. Post. Hello and welcome to Chats, a television podcast, Season 4, the ChatzRoom. My name is Alan, and I'm joined by... Wait. No, turn the microphones off. This show is done, and I'm so happy to finally be here in this wonderful moment with Magellan.
Wow. Hey, man.
We did it, like watching a star implode upon itself. We have taken it upon ourselves to watch the entirety of the Newsroom. And here we are at the finale.
This was your second time.
It is my second time. Second time watching the whole show. Sorry, I was confused.
Yeah, I just want to
applaud.
Really recognize that for a second. That you saw this once and you thought, let's go one more again. Let's give it one last ride.
Put one more coin in the horsey and spin it around. I am glad I did it. You know what? I'm glad I did it. Because if I went the rest of my life thinking, oh, come on, the internet makes fun of the Newsroom, but it's not that bad. If I lived the rest of my life thinking that, I would be worse off than I am now. Yeah. And I also got to watch it with my bestie. What else could I ask for?
Wait, who you watch it with?
It's you. It's
Oh.
Don't tell anyone. Don't tell Mom. I watched it with you. You're my best friend.
Yeah, man, it was awesome. I enjoyed it.
Well, I enjoyed it too. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Every week on this show, we watch 2 episodes of HBO's The Newsroom. And here we are, episode 13, watching the final 2 episodes. They are Season 3, Episode 5, Oh, Shenandoah. And Season 3, Episode 6, What Kind of Day Has It Been? First, we're going to be discussing Oh, Shenandoah, which was written, as always, by Aaron Sorkin, directed by Paul Lieberstein, aired December 7th, 2014, and it takes place June 24th, 2013. Maton, what happened in this episode?
In this episode, Will argues with his cellmate. Maggie and Jim try to catch Edward Snowden on a flight. Dawn works against Lucas Pruitt's wish to have a sexual assault victim and her abuser on the show together. And Charlie tries to keep everything together. Under all that stress, he collapses from a heart attack. Oh, Shenandoah, I love your daughter. Way rolling river. Shenandoah, I love your daughter. Away, you're bound away, cross the wide Missouri.
I feel like there are infinite American folk songs about like land masses in America.
Right.
There exists one for every hill, every peak, every valley, river, lake, tributary, peninsula. Everything has a song that was like from the 20th century, or the 19th century, and they're all that exact same like da 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 da. And that's actually what the episode is named after. And that summary is short, sweet, and to the point. But the episode, I thought at least, was kind of a mess.
Kind
I thought
of
it was
none
like
of those things.
yeah. It's just all over the place plot wise. There's so many, like, it's not even ends that they're trying to cut. They're not trying to like fix things or get to a conclusion. They're just trying to hurt. It's almost like they just had a bunch of unused script ideas or plot ideas, and they were like, we gotta get these all into one episode. We cannot end the show without an Edward Snowden plot. Like, we have to do it.
Yeah.
And it just makes the episode feel really hurried and like you're running it, like it's being rushed towards the end, which in a way I think
it is. I think it is.
It is rushed to the end, but it also makes the final scene where Charlie collapses kind of like feel in line with the pacing, because he's collapsing from stress and from having to accommodate so many different ideas and people's views, and that's what kills him, unfortunately. But like, this episode is also just a bunch of people trying to do the one thing and failing miserably, and it's really messy, and there's like actually some decent moments in it, I guess, but I couldn't get over the fact that it, as a result of having so much stuff in it, I could barely remember any of the individual like parts.
I watched this episode with my girlfriend, and she had been trying to watch and listen to our show, but she's not much of a TV viewer, so she kind of dropped off of the Newsroom. Understandable, given that it is not a good show.
No.
And so she hadn't really watched an episode since I think maybe like the second episode of season 2 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, just, watch this with me just so you can understand where the show has come, and I'll fill you in on the details. Don't worry. Like, basically all you got to know is Will's in jail, and Neil's in Venezuela, and Don and Sloan are together. Everybody's engaged, and so let's do it. And we were watching. Every time it cut to a new scene, she was like, oh my God, this is so much. They're trying to do so much, and it's all bad.
It's all bad.
It really is. It's moving at a breakneck pace for no reason, because every plot is bad. So we might as well just break them all down one by one, because they're pretty self-contained.
Yeah, I think so. It all, the only thing that connects it is we're working around it's the theme of we're working around a stressful news environment under the new administration, under Lucas Pruitt, and the struggles that means. Like, how do we do the stuff we did in seasons 1 and 2, but now under new management, is like what this episode. And it's weird because like you could almost you could do more episodes about this, about like, we have a boss who is requiring us to do all this stuff and bend over backwards to change the way that we do the news, and like the growing pains that come with that. Mm-hmm. And instead they put it into the second to last episode of the series. But which one do you want to start with?
Just whatever's speaking to you, man. I want you to guide me.
I could tell that the Will in jail stuff sounded really good to somebody. Like, so basically his cellmate is this like really shitty guy who is in jail for beating his wife, and Will criticizes him for that, rightfully. But the guy also comes back at Will and is the like classic shitty cellmate, being like, oh, well, you're just like a rich white guy and you use big fancy words to make younger and like less educated people seem stupid, and use your knowledge to not even make a point and to not even like listen to the other side. Yeah. He's playing the right wing, like he's playing the like salt of the earth conservative type, in a way, but also just challenging Will on his bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I would have loved. I think this is like something that works really well in a book. First of all, the like we are sitting in a jail cell talking about politics.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
that's true.
that's a really cool idea. But for the episode, it just feels like they're going. Anyways, a million things are going wrong. Meanwhile, what's the deal with the way that you don't support the president the way that I do? Like,
Right.
uh,
Yeah, I agree. It is something where the dialogue makes a lot of sense on the page, and um, yeah, I think this would have made a nice chapter in the Newsroom book where we're, because in a book you don't have to look at the set and look at how boring it is,
right.
where in this show, every time we cut back to the cell, it's not that interesting to look at. There aren't very many camera angles that you can find in that space, I don't think, to make that feel fresh. There's not a lot of movement that's really going on there. So it does feel very talking heads, and that makes the politics of it feel more obviously contrived, in a way that takes away from the effect.
And I think the way, like, one of my biggest problems with whenever Sorkin like has characters on this show, or whoever, like the crew of the show tries to have people on to play the opposite role of the speaker of Will in this case,
Yeah.
is they have a good point and you can see where they're coming from up until they say the one thing that's like, oh, now they're the villain, they're the cartoon conservative, the cartoon Republican, that like they do the thing that they do in the West Wing a million times where it's like, look at this dum dum. Because this guy is just saying mean things about Will, and Will's threatening him back, and it's like, wow, these guys both kind of suck. And then we cut to him, and he goes, "I hate the Jews," and the news media is run by the Jews.
Right.
Like, what do you know? What do you who? He's not a real person anymore. I mean, he is a real person, but like, fuck, like I can't. No rational person can hear this guy anymore and take his opinion seriously.
Well, it's just the characters in the Newsroom are never challenged in terms of their belief system, because every character that is put up against one of our Newsnight people, every character is made out to seem wrong. Right. The other example is, or another salient example is in this episode where Dawn is talking to the college student who's running the website about people who have experienced sexual assault and rape. Mm-hmm. And that's another moment where a character is being invented to theoretically represent an opposite side of the argument, but really is just being invented to show how smart Don is or Will is.
It's like they become these sort of loudspeakers or amplifiers for the opposing view.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because Sorkin clearly, we actually a couple weeks ago watched some short interviews with Aaron Sorkin, like talking about the Newsroom and talking in general about his politics and the way he writes politics into his shows. And it seems like the guy does want to portray all sides, mm-hmm. but he just has such a bias towards these, like, again, these white dudes who are just like, I'm the smart guy. I know what's right. You know, right. It's why Jim is made to be likable. It's why Will is made to be lovable. And Dawn is the rational person in the sexual assault plot line.
Yeah, and I have more to say from that perspective with the Dawn plot line than the Will plot line. Right. But something that Sorkin said in that interview we watched is that he just likes the sound of smart people arguing, which you can feel that in his dialogue. It does sound like that. But the content of it at the end of the day is not actually forwarding any sort of discourse, because this guy who's supposed to be voicing the idea that Will is an elitist, that Will is disdainful of the working class. It's like, oh, and also he like has beaten his wife and is an anti-Semite, and all of those things go together. And I get that Will's in jail, and so I guess you're supposed to make the person seem hardened and gritty and real, except that he's also like this kind of somewhat clean-cut guy who I've seen in TV shows before.
Right. So that guy's like on Justified and on I think he's on Always Sunny. Like,
yeah. So it's just hard. It's hard to buy him as actually a salt of the earth character, And his genuine criticisms of Will's elitism and Will sticking his nose up at people are lost in the fact that it's being conflated with him being a rube or being violent or being whatever it is.
Yeah, it just because like the first scene where he threatens Will gets to be like, "How tall are you? I'm taller than you, and I could kick your ass."
Oh
And it's
my
like, all right,
God.
Will is trying to be. He's being a person. Like he's being a little bit vulnerable and like trying to threaten somebody in a way that is like arrogant, and it's like theoretically the way that you get by in prison is through these like empty threats. So like, okay, maybe Will is like getting acclimated to like being a normal person. He's not just saying I'm better than you, like screw off. He's like, we're gonna fight. But we don't see the rest of the prison. Will gets out as soon as this conversation is over.
Well, because he's not in prison, he's in jail.
Or he's in jail. He's in holding.
Yeah.
But he gets out before he's processed any further. And in a way, for me, that just kind of like wiped our hands of anything we could have said about like what happens when Will McAvoy is forced to interact with the common person or the common criminal, I guess. But they don't do that. They're just like, all right, he got to have his soapbox where he got to feel really superior to this dumb guy. Let's get him out of here and do the damn news.
Right.
Exactly. In time, because they love having people arrive right when something is happening, arriving right when Charlie collapses.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm not criticizing this plot because I want Will to be like deeply flawed and defeated all the time.
No.
But you want your characters to be challenged and to grow, and I just don't feel like Will leaves this experience having grown or learned anything at all.
At all, yeah, exactly. But we move on. We have other plots. But I don't want to talk about the Dawn stuff just yet. I'm trying to think if there's another. Oh, I mean, Edward Snowden stuff is like pretty much played for comedy.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm fine with a Maggie Jim plot being comic relief. I don't want it to be anything else than that, to be honest.
Yeah, they're assigned to find. Well, what it is this is 2013, so Edward Snowden is like still going to a country to seek asylum, basically, and people find out that he's supposedly going to be on this plane, and so every journalist in the country or whatever has every news team sends a person to get on this flight. Of course, the flight fills up really fast because news moves fast. Maggie and Jim try to get on it. They're stuck in the airport with like no money and they're not able to get there. And what they end up doing is they meet a European couple. I think they're Russian.
Couple, I think.
Yeah. And it just also ends up being a joke about like Europeans too, where it's just like, hey, can we get some tickets? And then the girl is like translating for the boyfriend because the girl speaks English. And she's like, yeah, he'll give you his ticket for give him your ring. And he's like, that Jim's like, no, I don't want to give him my ring. That's my like grandfather's or whatever. It was given to me as like a part of a thing. And he's like, yeah, he'll take your ring and your money. Like just these like weird like cartoon and Russians like just strong arming you into giving them shit. And then they do it. Just like complete. I never have found this show that funny when it's intentionally trying to be funny.
Right. It's like a sitcom cut to on the plane and Jim's in his pajamas. And he's like, I gave away my briefcase and everything in my briefcase. I don't have anything anymore.
Jim, and he's just got a Sochi 2014 shirt.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's real dumb. And then they get on the plane and he's not there anyways, and they wasted their time. Da-da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah, except that the whole time Maggie's like, you got to talk to Hallie. Oh my God, remember Hallie is a character that I guess I care about.
For some reason?
For some reason. And Jim's like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I want her back, but she hates me, you know? Maggie says, call her. She's got to call her. But then, of course, Jim goes to call her. And wouldn't you know it, for some reason, his eyes are doing a rack focus onto Maggie. And he's in love with her or something. And then he says that he's in love with her, and then she makes him switch seats, and then she says, come with me. And then they sit down, and they kiss, and it's like, okay, all right, guys, whatever, it's fine.
Fucking whatever. That's technically the end of the Maggie Jim stuff.
And it's like not a very good kiss.
No.
This show doesn't have the Will Mackenzie kiss was also not very good.
Yeah, I don't think they know how to shoot kissing very well.
Yeah.
Or direct it. I don't know what that is. This is the thing I want to talk about, since this is like the romance plot of these episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen the Sidney Lumet film Network yet?
No, man, I want to.
You should super watch it now that we're done with the show. And as an adult, I think you'll like it more than I did when I saw it 8 years ago. It's very good. It's honestly of the Newsroom, but good in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Because what they do is, other than just we have a character who is a stand-in for like problems with the news media, there's also a romance plot that is intentionally really overwrought and bad.
Yeah.
But it's meant as a criticism of like how we romanticize humans and like want to like shipping culture and like the way we squish people together, and we're like, oh, we need to see these people fall in love and like have like a romance movie plot, and like how that doesn't work in real life and those things don't really happen. They do all of that in this whatever single film, and have criticisms of the media and politics, and they do it all much better than the Newsroom ever does. And it's kind of a friend of the podcast, Ryan, was like, is the Newsroom just like bad network? And I was like, shit. Kinda. It's not. It doesn't exactly line up, because the network is not trying to like do anything ripped from the headlines, but they're both trying to be prescient in ways, I think. But I was just thinking about that because this like Maggie Jim stuff is the closest. Like, I think we were reading somewhere that Sorkin was like, oh yeah, I wanted to do like a rom-com in my show because I like rom-coms.
Yeah.
And
yeah, it's not like subversive or it's nothing like what you just said about Network.
But it's not even a good rom-com.
No, it's not.
Even if it's trying to be sincerely what it is, it's not a good one.
Yeah, they're not even Ross and Rachel. That's what my girlfriend said. She's like, are they trying to make them a Ross and Rachel of the show? It's like, yeah, but even Ross and Rachel had pathos at the end of the day.
Right.
Even if they were annoying, you still kind of knew that you wanted them to be together. But Jim and Maggie, you don't. Who cares? Who cares?
Whether or not Hallie's involved, who cares? Come on, guys. Just get past this. And they finally do, but this was their last gasp. But like, guys, they're on a plane together. Oh my God, romance.
Yeah.
They're gonna kiss. Ugh. Is it time for us to talk about Dawn?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Is Mackenzie doing anything in this episode?
Like stressing about Will. I mean, I don't have any notes here, but I should also mention, we're both pulling from my notes this week, and about halfway through this episode, I decided it was time to have a little beverage with my TV.
Yep.
And by the time we reached the finale, my notes became pretty much incomprehensible. So we're running on former fumes here. So from here, I don't know how accurate my notes are, but I don't have anything about Mackenzie stuff.
All right.
I have something here that does say Edward Snowden. Because I thought that was really funny at the time. Yeah, I don't remember anything else except Dawn and like Charlie's stuff, I think.
And Sloane with the app guy.
Oh yeah, that's a thing. So that's when she's like talking to the new IT guy, the new Neil, basically. Is it that one?
Yeah.
And
you want to talk about that and then talk about the Dawn thing?
Yeah, that's a good pivot.
Yeah, so they have this apparent whatever. So Lucas Pruitt, he wants to make all these new techie changes, and they have the new like advertising block or whatever, promo, I should say, where it says #YourACN, and Dawn says it looks like urine.
It doesn't, Dawn.
Oh yeah, it looks like it says acne, but ACN already looked like it said acne. And so he's trying to make all these changes, and one of the changes is that there's a whole new ACN digital team who's managing the website that Neil had been, I guess, working really hard to make credible, as he says when he comes back in the next episode, which we'll talk about. And it's just run by like it's just run by these.
The cast of Silicon Valley.
Yeah, just these gremlins, just these like white boy gremlins. I can just feel Sorkin's distaste for anything
He hates
technological.
these people. He hates it.
It's so gross. Anyway, and so their big thing is like it's an app where citizen journalists can report things that they see, but really it's about like keeping tabs on celebrities. And the big thing that Sloane is worried about is that a famous person is going to be hurt in the process of doing this and using this app.
Yeah.
So which is a fair thing to worry about, although this whole episode is really painting an interesting picture of who Aaron Sorkin thinks needs to be protected in our society.
Exactly. Yeah.
So on its own, this wouldn't be that questionable, but paired with the plot, with Don's plot, it's sort of like, okay, you're a famous white guy, so I guess it makes sense. I guess it makes sense that you think that we need to worry about rich people and men and keeping them safe. So Sloane has the leader of ACN Digital on the show and just rips into him.
Yeah.
About this terrible app idea. And that precipitates Charlie getting super pissed and then yelling at Pruitt and then dying. And yeah, that's that.
I was just going to say, like, this is a very cursed take that I'm sure some listener out there is going to be like, what the fuck, Alan? The 2013 film The Circle has a plot. It's basically about like a surveillance world where everyone has like technology that lets them see what everyone else is seeing at all times, but it's opt-in, so technically everyone will want to do it. Mm-hmm. And the problems that come from that, obviously. And they have a extended scene where they develop an app that helps people triangulate criminals' locations and then like arrest them on the spot as people. And that scene, while very silly, and that whole film is very ridiculous, like kind of gets this idea across way better and the problems with it than this does. Because this doesn't imply that there is anything actually good about being able to track down people.
Right.
Because, like, yeah, using this to track down celebrities in a harmless way to be like, I want to get a picture of this guy is, like, weird and voyeuristic, but so is celebrity worship. Like, it's just tapping into what people already feel.
Yeah.
It doesn't suggest anything about how we could use that to, like, work with law enforcement and enforce law enforcement to be more accountable.
Right.
It just goes like, no, but like, dude, like famous people are gonna get killed. Like, we're gonna have a famous celebrity is gonna die. Like, Seth's so bad, and doesn't take into account like the millions of people who's like regular people whose lives would be at risk from technology of this type.
Yeah, it seems like the problem that I have ultimately with this episode and with the Newsroom more broadly and its stance on new technology is that Aaron Sorkin would rather reject new ideas and try to preserve existing institutions and existing norms than he wants to consider new ideas and build upon them and adjust them to make a better new idea. Because there are, like, the ACLU has an app where you can report instances of police abusing their authority. And you can take video of it and upload it. And that is a version of this sort of like citizen journalist, citizen watchdog thing that has an express positive social purpose. Whereas, yeah, of course, the app that's all about like, oh my God, Brad Pitt's getting a donut at Donuts Town. Yeah, that's bad. Of course that's bad. But that's a total straw man.
Right.
And when the character is supposed to be defending the app is even like, yeah, it's not good. I never said it was good or about facts. Then it's just a waste. It just seems like Sorkin is creating side characters that he can put on trial the people that he doesn't like or the ideas that he imagines he doesn't like, rather than actually engaging with them.
Engaging with them, or like seeing different points of view and understanding that there's a way to think that accommodates different opinions.
Yeah,
Like
even understand it's reasonable to disagree, which in this case,
yeah,
it's not reasonable to disagree.
it's like no, you're an idiot. You're the dumb guy that's sitting with me in jail who's like actually a like abusive husband and also he's an idiot. He's uneducated. Like these kind of characters suck because they just make it seem like those people are bad and we should feel good for not being like them.
Yeah.
And this is the last episode of this podcast, so I'm just gonna go ahead and tell this quick story, even though I want to get to the Dawn stuff. Just yesterday, 24 hours ago, I went into Boston for an event, and I got off of the train at downtown, in like not a sketchy area, but it's near a hospital, so like oftentimes there's a lot of crime near hospitals. Literally the second I get up the stairs out of the train station.
Yeah.
I witnessed just a couple feet away from me, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 police officers tackling a single black man to the ground,
Jesus.
like, and screaming, and like binding his legs and like attacking him. And it scared me so much, and nobody thought to film it or to ask about it. People watched. People like stopped their cars to watch. The police didn't like interact with anyone because no one cared to document it. Everyone was like, "That's weird. It's a Sunday. I don't know."
Wow.
And that just happened. And like me saying this is like the only documentation of that happening, and it was like so fucked. And I'm like, this. I don't know. Sometimes I think that bad people can be held accountable if people can voluntarily like film that stuff and
Right.
and transcribe it.
Yeah,
But
there's something about trying to make the citizenry feel more powerful that is valuable. And it's upsetting that the newsroom is completely dismissing that and saying, no, what we need is actually good, responsible, moral people at the top to keep leading from the top. But maybe that's not what we need. Maybe that's not a good thing. Maybe it's not good to try to rely on once in a generation one newscaster who's going to tell us like it is.
exactly. Yeah.
Maybe we need a world where people feel like they can be the ones who are making the decisions about what is reported upon and what the standards of practice are, where people feel empowered to have conversations and to share information and to research and to watch out for what's going on. Maybe that's a better society. But it just seems like this show is not willing to accept that and just is so wrapped up in its nostalgia for Walter Cronkite and people like that it can't see any further.
We could drop this here. We could end the podcast. We've now said that's it, right?
Yeah,
Like
pretty much, yeah.
And I mean, continuing like the Dawn stuff that we keep hinting at. Basically, Dawn is assigned to go speak to a student at I believe it's Is it Princeton?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Princeton University. I have her name here somewhere. Sarah Sutherland. Oh no, Sarah Sutherland's the name of the actress because I really like that actress. She's also on Veep. Fun trivia. Her character is dating, I think, and eventually marries the character played by the actress who also plays the Source in this season.
Oh, that's funny.
So they're both on Veep as like cool lesbians. And she's telling Dawn and telling the news media, hey, I made this website for people to report their instances of sexual assault so we can finally take these terrible people to jail and get justice for the victims.
Yeah.
Lucas Pruitt wants to frame this as an opportunity to hear both sides and get a controversial, clickbaity story up. So he says, Dawn, I need you to convince the girl to speak on camera with her abuser.
Yeah.
And Dawn knows this is fucked. Like Dawn, and I don't think Lucas Pruitt is even, he's like, this is where he kind of becomes like the cartoon bad guy because he's like, we got to get the clicks. But we're hearing this as hearsay. We're not hearing him talk about this or justify this.
Mm-hmm.
What we get is Dawn going to the woman's dorm room and speaking one-on-one with her. And this is actually a plot that I've been hinting at for a while because I kept mistaking it for a Jim plot because Jim and Dawn mix up in my head all the time. But it's just Dawn basically saying, if I remember this correctly,
Yeah.
even though I know you did it, I don't think you should report this guy because
Even though he knows that that person raped her, you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
Even though he knows all of that, I don't think you should report it because they're not going to believe you and it's going to be bad for you in the end.
Yes, that's part of what he's saying. And the other part of what he's saying is that she's running this website where women can report these experiences that they've had in the hopes of gaining some sense of justice. And he's saying a website like this should not exist at all because there's the chance that even one person could be wrongly accused.
Right.
Which is
And
like,
someone could lose,
yikes.
like, the really, like, the fucking Brock Turner argument of, like, he was going to be he was going to, like, help the world and make the world a better place until somebody, like, said a bad thing about him. Which is ghoulish, first of all. It's, like, appalling. It makes Dawn look bad, and it feels bad, especially to me, because the show, well, first of all, the show doesn't make it seem like Dawn's wrong. The show is like, yeah, it's this sad it's him realizing that what I'm saying makes me sound like shit and makes me sound like a bad person and is a bad thing, but that's the way the world is and we're just going to have to deal with it.
Right.
And that is as cynical as it gets in the newsroom. That is as, like, the world is fucked, we might as...
Deeply cynical.
It's so profoundly depressing. Like, it is he's the president, we might as well start calling him president kind of thing. Like that joke that we've made before. Just like acceptance of failure. And it's so disappointing. Like, if I don't know, whatever. This Lucas Pruitt stuff could have been an opportunity to be like, oh, well, maybe some of the things that we assume about how the world works need to change. But now it's just like, no, this new order is just this is just bad.
Well, it's just, and the logic of it is so, I just can't get behind it because, again, it's grounded in this unceasing devotion to institutions as they exist. And ultimately, what Don keeps coming back to is this principle that our justice system is founded on the idea that you are innocent until proven guilty. Again and again, that's the thing that he is hanging his hat on, is that I know this doesn't seem fair, but our society works because people are innocent until proven guilty. That's essentially what he's saying. Mm-hmm. And that is not a system that's built to favor victims. It's built to favor people who are accused. Yeah. So I think it's important to recognize that. And I think it's interesting that the show is recognizing that. And that seems like a Don thing to say, right? Because he is a realist and he is a somewhat cynical person. But then the next step of his argument is to say, essentially, because that's how our system works, we can't have any extra legal system of trying people in the court of public opinion because there are not those protections.
Right.
Which is something that is up for debate on certain issues, this idea of trying people in the court of public opinion, and has gained new relevance during the Me Too movement, I think. But so then his thinking is, even one person whose life is like ruined or disrupted by a false accusation, we need to make sure that that never happens. Never mind the fact all of these women feel that they have no recourse for justice whatsoever and feel that their lives are being adversely affected by the experiences that they've had, that there's no one there to sympathize, empathize with them, or to help them. And he's saying, well, sorry, that's how it's got to be, because what if one of them turns out to be lying? Never mind that the rest of them are telling the truth. If even one of them is lying, then the whole thing has to be shut down. And that absolutism, that devotion to this institutional norm that really, when you look at it, maybe makes sense, but maybe isn't as airtight as it seems, that absolutism drives me fucking bananas. It drives me crazy.
It is the scary thing is, and I've heard this argument delivered to me specifically, is you can tell me, hey, do you believe that often innocence until proven guilty is an effective system? Yeah, that makes sense. I get that.
Yeah.
Do you also believe that this website could be hijacked by someone who could ruin people's lives? Yeah. Obviously, there are bad people out there, but this website also prevents bad people from getting by. And you just made you gave me two. I said yes to you twice, but now you're telling me we should shut the website down.
Right.
And if suddenly your argument is completely light years away from me, I cannot even begin to entertain the thought.
Right.
And it's like, I want to be able to have the discussion and come to an understanding, but you say stuff like that, Dawn becomes that character. The show, without a doubt, says, no, Dawn is level-headed here. Mary, the woman, is like,
Yeah.
she's just being, she's worried. She's stressed out because she's a victim. We get that. But Dawn's right, you guys, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And that sucks. That's the part.
And it doesn't make sense to me because I don't know, maybe it's because I grew up with the internet, and so to me the idea of people claiming things anonymously on the internet is not that worrisome. I think it's perfectly fine for there to be a message board somewhere where people are discussing this. And I think I have the assumption that there might be one voice in there who's not telling the truth, because that's how the internet works. People just lie in places. But that's not the end of the world, because the aggregate purpose of the website is to draw attention to a phenomenon that people are not acknowledging. That's the value of the website. The value of the website is not necessarily penal. It's not about carrying out investigations into people. It's about recognizing that we are not serving the women in our society the way that we need to be. And I think that alone is reason enough for the website to continue to exist. You can acknowledge that obviously an anonymous post on a website is not admissible evidence in court, that someone needs to, give, identify themselves and give their personal account in whatever case comes to bear. But if the police are not even investigating your case, then it's important that you have a platform to say that, so that people know about that and we start a conversation. So it just, it seems so short-sighted that the thing that Sorkin is worrying about is, like you just said, the Brock Turner thing, which hits really close to home for me, because I was at Stanford when that case was being tried, I guess. Yeah, tried. When that case was being tried. So it was a conversation that was being had quite a bit on campus. And so I've really soured on this, like, oh no, this poor guy's not going to get his sports scholarship because he, decided to sexually assault someone when she was unconscious. I don't have any sympathy for that. There's no part of my mind that's like, well, we have to make sure that this is real. Because I just can't imagine a person in my life who would lie about having an experience like that.
What exactly? Bill Cosby was announced guilty this week, you guys. Like,
right. We're living in a world that is still similar to the world of this Newsroom episode, but has changed in certain fundamental ways.
Right. We're moving somewhere. It's really scary. We're gonna stories like this keep coming out all the time. This is totally a thing the Newsroom should talk about. It's super disappointing for them to take this stance, though.
Yeah, and I agree with Don that she shouldn't be on TV with.
Obviously with the guy.
That's that's not a good idea, because it is taking advantage of her and her story and turning it into theater.
Of course.
Yeah, but his reasoning is totally flawed, in my opinion.
And he basically, the way it all concludes is he informs her, like, hey, your argument is flawed, and I understand all your things that you're rebutting me with, but ultimately I'm not going. What he ends up doing is he becomes the hero again and tells his boss, I never found her. She can't be on the show. We can't have her on the interview because I never was able to find the girl. Oh, well, I guess she doesn't have to be on TV anymore, which is like arguably worse. Like, it just quiets the case down then.
Yeah.
Like, why not just make the argument of, like, we should have her on to talk about how she feels? They don't have that conversation.
Yeah, it doesn't. You're right. It doesn't have to be a debate between her and the person. But it could be a platform for her to talk about her website. Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a debate, period.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
It's a super bummer. And all of this, of course, blows up in the final scene where Charlie's stressing out and then collapses, hits his head on a table, and this is the time for us to start playing Oh Shenandoah.
Jesus fuck, man. I was so
That's like an
angry.
offensive way to use music, dude.
I was so angry. It was like perfectly, it's like there was a little play button on the desk.
Right when he hits the desk, it's like music time, guys. It's the episode title. Like, this is a really common trope in TV, is like the sad, like, folksy music plays when
they did it last episode. Don't tell me about a trope in TV. Last episode ended with a slow motion montage set to an old ass song that was also the title of the episode.
Right. Wait, last week?
Wasn't it Ave Maria the title, or was it not the title?
It was Contempt, but yeah, you're right about the scene.
All right. Well, anyway.
But yeah, it's the same idea of like the song means one. It's the contrast, right? It's the song means one thing and the event means something else. Because I guess isn't Oh Shenandoah also just like a forlorn song? And then they're like, oh, but Charlie's dead, guys. Like, look at him collapse.
Yeah, it's like a unrequited love kind of thing or something. But to me, it just smacked of like, what song are we going to use? Well, Charlie's pretty fucking old. What if we use like an old ass like 1800s song? Does that sound good? Yeah, that should be free, right?
Google's it. Oh, it's like, oh, all right, cool. I got it on the free website. Sweet, toss that in there. Hey, how do we sync it up? When do we hit play? Oh, is there like a beat, like a good camera cut? No, he kind of just hits his head. That's the moment that we're gonna play the song. Fuck off, Newsroom. Get out of here with that. No, thank you.
It's in the same lineage as Fix You.
It is the same lineage. This is the same show that did Fix You. You're right.
It's just in the show's DNA.
To just use music terribly.
Yeah.
That's it, man. That's Oh Shenandoah. I have nothing else to say about this episode.
Yeah.
I'm spent.
I was really frustrated, just the last thing, and this will overlap. I was frustrated that the resolution to Will being in jail is that the source just committed suicide.
Yep.
Because then Will gets to be principled but never actually has to make a hard choice.
Nope.
And Neil just gets to come back.
He's just the boss now.
And there are no consequences, so why'd we even bother?
What was the Neil plot? What was the... Like, this show just builds these plots for entire seasons and then cuts them off at the tail.
Yeah.
What are you guys doing? Neil's just back.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Yeah, let's take a break. We'll be right back. We'll be right back to discuss what kind of day has it been. Hello, listeners, and welcome to the News Bag, where I, Alan, read your commentary, your feedback, your emails, and your tweets. This time, I'm joined by my guest, my co-host, my friend. Hey, Magellan.
Hey, what's up, fella?
It's the middle segment, and I wanted to have you on since this is our last News Bag, and it's our last email from our buddy Dan, theoretically. He sent this email today. Good timing. And we're going to read it and talk about it. So, Dan says... As you guys start to bring this one in for a landing, I want to take another moment to appreciate your choice in covering the Newsroom. A show doesn't have to be a gem in order to be a show worth talking about. While I can't walk away from this show singing its praises, I have to recognize that I've probably spent just about as much time blathering about it as I did with Farscape, which is one of my favorite shows. It's worth exploring how a show can be compelling even as it fails to engage its audience in an honest way. Thanks, Dan. We try.
Yeah. I think the value here is that it, something that we don't say enough to its credit, is that Sorkin at least seems to be idealistic. You can rip into him for his cynicism and for some short-sightedness, but ultimately he is striving for something, and it does seem like his characters want some kind of better world. So it's a bad show, but it's a bad show that's trying to be optimistic. And that I think allows us to have a conversation about goals and about society in a way that can also be optimistic. You know what I mean? So that's the value that I've gotten out of it. Yeah.
He goes on to say, with that being said, it seems like an intentional choice that one of these last episodes would be titled Contempt. Does Sorkin have contempt for his audience, or does he feel like they have contempt for him? It seems like he's regarded the show like a bullhorn for spreading his gospel, but he treats it as if he's just shouting into the ether, and that viewers should soak up his message, and that should count as engagement. But when you're trying to impart a message, you have to treat the audience like its own entity, with its own thoughts, feelings, and views, and you need to respect that instead of blindly powering through your message.
Yeah.
He goes on, how many times must have Aaron Sorkin thought, why don't they get it? And why don't they get me? I just want to say to Sorkin, I'm not sure you get yourself, dude. Much less could you understand the audience. You cannot just chain together a bunch of snappy millennial axe-grinding monologues and call that a complete show. At least, I don't think you can. Sorkin seems to have had plenty of success in spite of himself. And he concludes, I have tons of other shows I'd suggest you cover. They pretty much all fail in just one, albeit important criteria. The shows I tend to love are virtually impossible to find by conventional means. Much of it is obscure or underappreciated genre stuff from the 90s and aughts that you can only find on eBay.
Oh, that's on eBay? Like on physical discs?
Yeah, because some super fan is cleaning out their garage. But if you ever decide to do a weird stuff you've never heard of podcast, I will have a nice playlist for you.
Oh,
Thank you, Dan.
Heck yeah.
Give me the playlist. Give me the chocolate.
I want that list.
Yeah, it's not only the people on the newsroom and on Newsnight talking to their audience, it's Aaron Sorkin talking to the viewing audience. Except the difference is, I think, this is maybe a weird stretch, but I think Newsnight thinks their audience is unintelligent and needs to be educated. I think Sorkin is happy that his audience is educated and wants to feed their ego. I think that's the difference.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
He's not trying to challenge us with this show and be like, guys, you didn't know this, but this is a thing, young people. You need to get this. He's like, no, you're smart. Look at, they're smart like you. Look at them make fun of idiot Republicans. Look at this. Isn't it great? Isn't it fun?
Well, that speaks to the whole conceit that it's the news of a couple of years ago. The audience is fully educated on the events. Everyone knows what happened. So, yeah, there is no mission to civilize in the newsroom, the way that theoretically Will McAvoy and Charlie have a mission to civilize, which is a very questionable term, but it's the term that they use.
Yeah, right.
There is no mission to educate us or to edify us in any way. It is just entertainment, and it's, like you said, making ourselves feel better, making ourselves feel superior, making ourselves feel that, oh, we get it now, and we know right from wrong, or we know good from bad, in a way that doesn't actually get us to critically engage with ourselves, our own views, and doesn't have the characters do the same thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like this question of, like, how do you separate the audience of the show versus the audience of the show within the show? And what that says about, like, I think, I forget who said this, but a long time ago, someone really smart said to me, whenever you are consuming a piece of media, be it literature or visual mediums or whatever, always, always, always take into account what is it trying to tell me beyond what the plot is, and who the characters are and what the setting is. All that stuff is important, and that's the stuff that we learn in an English class is, like, valid. But even, like, Game of Thrones is political. Everything has a message it's trying to tell to me. Even a kid's cartoon is political. And we cannot deny that the show is trying to either make me feel some way or make me think something. Sometimes it's more obvious than others. Like with the newsroom, it's obvious. They want the audience to feel good. They want the audience to feel intelligent and warm and love these people. And it fails because of that, because it's trying hard to do that. But it's important to acknowledge that every show is doing this.
Yeah, I think what it comes down to for me, the newsroom is making me realize that we all assume, I think at least people who are college educated, assume that there's a part of the country out there that is dumb and that needs to be told how to think.
There's a dumb racist half that we don't talk about.
Or there's just people who are not well informed, and the problem is that we're not a well informed population.
Yeah.
And I think there are problems about people not being very careful about the way that they analyze the sources of their information. That's certainly an issue. But I think that honestly, making a better society is now not about us seeking to educate each other, but it's about us seeking a way to have dialogue with each other that is constructive and that is revealing of what we think, that is collaborative, and that can actually make some sort of change happen. Because if everybody is looking at society and they're saying, oh my God, this place is full of dumb people that I got to teach how to think smart, then nobody's ever going to be listening to each other. And I don't think that people are stupid on the whole. I just don't think that. I can't believe that. And this show is asking me to believe that in a way that I can't accept.
Yeah. At this point, it's just more important for us to acknowledge our own faults and work to improve instead of criticizing other people for not improving to be where we are.
Yeah.
To like as if the playfield needs leveling, whereas in reality the playfield needs elevating.
And I still think that there are injustices and ignorances that we can and should point out in the world. Like, it's not like we can't look at things we know are wrong and say, oh, but I gotta, humble myself first.
No.
But at the end of the day, I think there needs to be a shift away from I need to teach to I need to converse and connect. And through conversation and connection, that's how we can begin to understand each other.
Star Trek.
Oh.
That's all of, you just did all of, that's all of Star Trek.
Wow, all right.
Oh boy, good stuff. But yeah, that is going to do it for this issue of the News Bag. Of course, if you want to send in your feedback, we do a plug segment at the end. And stay tuned as we discuss the season finale of the Newsroom.
Welcome back to the ChatzRoom. The second episode we watched this week was Season 3, Episode 6, What Kind of Day Has It Been? It was written by Aaron Sorkin, directed by Alan Powell. It aired on December 14th, 2014, and it takes place, well, it hops around in time in different ways. I'm Magellan. I'm still joined by Alan. Alan, hello, sir.
Hello, friendo. How are you?
Oh, just exactly the same as I was a couple minutes ago, because it's the same day.
It's the same. Wow.
Wink.
Timelines. Wink, wink.
Not the same day. Alan, what happened in this episode?
Well, essentially a 45-minute origin story. We see several members of the Newsnight cast meeting for the first time, how their lives were affected by Charlie, and this is all framed as them reminiscing at the man's funeral. At the end of the episode, Jim and Will play an old folk song that Charlie liked with his grandson. Life moves on. Will and Mac are married. They're expecting a child. Mackenzie is promoted to the new CEO of Newsnight. Jim is the new EP. Neil rebuilds their website with Pruitt's new hires. And we end on a shot of Will delivering another day's news. So, here's the thing with What Kind of Day Has It Been? First of all, that title's a mess. That's a jumbled word salad of a mess.
It's the title of an episode of every Aaron Sorkin show.
What kind of day has it been? Like a busy one, dude. Come on.
Yeah, it's been, I need to put my feet up. These puppies are screaming.
Couple things. One, choosing to use your final episode to eulogize a character who died last episode is a weird choice.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess it's sort of in a meta way eulogizing the show and being
Sure,
like, oh, remember when we all met each other? But these are moments that we, like, I don't... Problem is ultimately that I don't have fondness for these characters, so seeing them like meet isn't exciting.
Right. There's also just not... There's not always pleasure in looping back to where you started, necessarily.
Right, yeah.
Or connecting dots that don't need to be connected. I mean, this is just the problem with prequels in any manifestation of prequels that have ever existed. This is the problem with Star Wars, that you answer questions that people didn't really want answered and they weren't really asking them to begin with. Like, I don't really need to know that Mac knew the question that the girl at the event asked in the first episode. I didn't need to know that. That doesn't add or enrich anything for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's not fun to know that. And Yeah, I don't know. It also, this is the experience that I was the most reminded of, actually, was not the most reminded of, but somewhat reminded of, was the experience of watching the How I Met Your Mother finale,
Oh, okay.
where, and I want to pick your brain about this because I think both probably came from a similar place. I think this is the problem with a show creator or creators conceiving how a show is going to end when they are also conceiving of how it starts. Because then
Oh.
whatever happens in the interim, you have to tie up and essentially cancel out so that you can have the ending that you initially thought of.
Thinking about How I Met Your Mother, I'm remembering that, God, half a decade old phone call where we like talked for like over an hour in college about that finale and how it like felt
Was that
unsatisfying.
5 years ago?
Was that not 2013?
Are you
You want to
what?
feel old yet?
Oh my god.
March 31st, 2014, 4 years ago.
Oh my god.
A little over, yeah, a little over 4 years ago. Yeah, we're fucking crusty as
Oh.
heck. But it's just like a sunny day in March, and we're just sitting talking about like, man, like I liked it, but like I don't think I'm gonna like it in the long run, and like I have problems with it,
The
and
finale, yeah.
yeah, that was at least how I felt. I've like come to dislike it more and more, as with distance, but I didn't need to know any of this, and it really relies on the thing that the show has always been trying to do, which is make you like these people and care about who they are and where they are and what they're going to become and how they mature through all these events.
Well, and it is partly about, yeah, about liking the characters, but also it turns everything from the first episode into puppetry
Hmm.
on the part of Charlie. And so none of it feels genuine or feels really motivated by the characters themselves. It feels like Charlie's dead, and so now we can turn him into this like mad genius who knows exactly how Mackenzie and Will are going to act in every situation and knows how to get the show that he wants. Um, and it kind of ruins the character of Charlie for me a little bit, that he's like orchestrating these situations. And it also makes it even more sad that the show became what it became, where it did not in any way live up to Charlie's mission to civilize, quote unquote.
Yeah, I think you nailed it with the like them putting the words posthumously in Charlie's mouth. Really messes up the message of the show because I've said straight up on this show more than once, I think Charlie is the best character. I've said that jokingly and I've said it seriously at times because he often had the most self-awareness and confidence in the things he was saying without the burden of having like having personal drama. He had none of that. He was just the message. He was just the I want to maintain the integrity of Newsnight. I want to civilize the people and all this stuff. That was just Charlie, and he was funny,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes he was out of touch, but he was just that. He was fully that character, and he dies because of him being that character too much. And that works from a narrative perspective. Like, yeah, this character collapses from exhaustion, and then it turns out to be fatal. It's a fatal heart attack. But the show paints him in this finale as like the guy who knew everything all along and not the person who was
Yeah.
like figuring it out with the rest of us. Like
Right.
it's sort of
Right.
like a post-credit scene that reveals, oh, secretly Charlie knew everything and brought Mac and Will together and like got Jim and Maggie introduced and all this stuff. And it's like he wasn't that though. We know he wasn't that.
Yeah. It does make him less human, right? It does
Mm-hmm.
kind of try to deify him or turn him into the concept rather than the person. Um, because I think really Charlie's role on the show has always been to represent the kind of nostalgic moral conscience of the way that the news used to be good. Um, and the problem is that most of the time, pretty much everybody always listened to Charlie. Um, so it was, I appreciated I appreciated seeing Charlie sell out a little bit in the second to last episode,
Yeah.
and that cheapens that too. where he's making real concessions in a difficult situation, and he's actually having to decide, what do I need to compromise in order to get most of my dream to be realized. But he never has to talk to Will about that. There never has to be a reckoning about, did he make the right decisions. He just is killed off so that he can turn into the platonic ideal of like the wise old man who always knew what was right. And yeah, it just totally turns Charlie into this mythical archetype rather than a person who is running a newspaper.
And that is a news station, you mean?
Yeah. Sorry.
That is why it's so weird and disappointing that we finally meet Charlie's wife in this episode,
Mm-hmm.
and it just for a line where they do everything that you just said, which is they talk about like, oh, I'm basically the reason that Charlie had the heart attack. Like I made him compromise the vision, and I like like Dawn says that, I think, and like I stressed him out to death, and she says, nope, he always knew you guys were right. He was the reason he had that heart attack was because he was conflicted with how to reconcile that, and he was having that argument in his head. But he always knew you guys were right. He didn't yell at you because he was angry. He yelled at you because you were right.
But then it raises the question of, why did Charlie have a heart attack exactly?
Right.
If he was so in control and knew what was going on and was proud of them, then it makes even less sense that his stress reaches this critical mass. And Don doesn't have to answer for the fact that he took a stand against his boss who he had trusted before. Sloane doesn't have to answer for that. Nobody has to answer for his death because Charlie's wife is being brought in as a character who's just there to forgive them and not to have any like humanity or suffering or grief of her own.
And because instead of grief, the show focuses on the future, and like two main characters on a TV show, especially like a sitcom, having a child is the ultimate like it's time for us to look forward message that the show creators are doing.
It's how Friends wraps up with Chandler and Monica adopting kids.
Yeah, it's the easiest shorthand for like, all right, it's time to move on. We are having like that. That is what that means.
Yeah.
When you do that in a TV show.
Mm-hmm.
And all this, like we said, is framed in the funeral. Like we get these scenes of like Jim and Maggie in the office. We get literal flashbacks to earlier scenes in the show between Charlie and Will. We get them having old man conversations. We get obviously the extended origin of the big question. Yeah. Why is America the greatest country in the world? And that is supposed to frame that scene like it's supposed to make us sympathetic or something for the girl. Because she says something like, oh, it's been a really rough semester for me, and like the country's in a really weird spot, and I just kind of like want to ask a hopeful question, and that's why I'm going to ask this question that's going to create Newsnight in a way.
It also makes that scene turns Mackenzie into this like Machiavellian figure kind of where she knows that the question is terrible. And she says, okay, I'm going to make sure she asks this because it's going to piss Will off and make him explode.
Right. I need to push him in that way. But that's Mackenzie. That's her character. She's there to push Will.
But not in this manipulative way that scapegoats a college-age girl.
True. It's sort of using that person and their words for her own gain, I guess. For her own kicks, even.
Right.
There's some other nonsense in here. Lucas Pruitt gets some last-minute bad character development, talking about, he argues about why women should get paid less or something. He's having like talks about equal pay in the workplace, and gets in trouble, gets called a sexist by someone, which is fine. Like, yeah, that's what that is. Great job, guys. But they then use that as an excuse to say that is maybe theoretically why he hires Mackenzie to be the new CEO.
Yeah, I think, well, really what's going on is Lucas Pruitt is in a position where he's going to fire Mackenzie and Sloane because they interviewed the ACN Digital guy in the combative way that they did.
Was that this episode or last episode?
Last episode that interview happened. And then this episode, Leona Lansing is trying to convince him to not fire Mackenzie because it'll make him look even worse in terms of his attitudes towards women at his companies. And maybe instead the smart thing to do would be to promote her to fill Charlie's position. So we know that Mackenzie deserves the job,
Total. That's the thing, right? Yeah.
right? So I think it's okay because there needs to be a narrative justification for why one episode he's like, I'm going to fire you. And the next one he's like, I'm not actually going to fire you.
I'm in fact going to make you the CEO.
Right. And I think it's okay because we know that Mackenzie deserves the job and all the characters respect her and know that she deserves it and know that Lucas Pruitt is an asshole. And I think it's just a narrative contrivance. I don't think they need to be spending as much time on it as they do. And that is what might make it feel a little drawn out and a little questionable. That it seems like Aaron Sorkin is trying to grandstand about the issue of women's equality in the workplace. In a way that maybe he's trying to signal allyship.
Right.
So that, that's what's problematic here. But I think the actual event in the course of the story is not necessarily itself problematic.
Right. No, the final result of where everybody lands at the end is mostly fine. Mackenzie is the CEO. That seems about right. She's good at managing people. Jim is the new executive producer. That's fine. He learned from Mackenzie. He worked under her for most of his adult life. He's, I guess, responsible enough to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Maggie decides to take another job instead of being with Jim.
So Jim recommends her for a field reporter position in DC, and she's going to go interview for that. And then it,
Right.
No.
Right. Exactly. Those words you just said.
And then there's all this stuff in this episode about every time we flash back to Jim, he's like in this failing long distance relationship. And he's like, long distance doesn't work, man. It's impossible, man. I'm going to play my guitar with my goatee, man. By the way, this is like only 2 years before the rest of the show.
Before we cut to him falling on his ass in episode 1. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're, first of all, adding all this. I guess he was in a long distance relationship with Hallie, so that's lines up. But we're kind of stressing this part of Jim's character that I feel like hadn't been stressed before, where he's the guy who gets into long distance or something, or like lets the relationship go on longer than it's supposed to. Anyway, and it seems like he and Maggie are going to end up in different cities. And she's like, does he want me to go? We've only been dating for a couple days. What's the plan here? Just a lot of quibbling between the two of them that does not matter. Couldn't we have just stopped it at them kissing on the plane and be done with it? And instead, Go ahead. There's like a line that drives me crazy.
Yeah, I mean, there were options for them to end this in a way that I'd be like, all right, this doesn't bother me. Either Maggie stays with ACN and ends up working with Jim, and they have a relationship together in person, and that's great.
Yeah.
Or she works somewhere else, and they have a relationship that's long distance, and they both learn to make it work. Or she leaves. They break up. They both have good jobs. Everybody's happy. These are all valid things to just be like, all right, we did it. Cut it off. Let's go.
Yeah.
But it's drawn out. It's unnecessary.
And I understand that the arc of Maggie's character, at least on paper, is hapless intern becomes incredibly competent reporter person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I understand that that's the arc. And so it makes sense that the end of the show for her is her becoming a hotshot field reporter in DC. I think the thing that just bugged me was them agonizing over their relationship and what is it going to be like, because we don't care. Like, I would love for that just be a question mark, without them kind of going back and forth on this. There were a couple things that were said between them that really bugged me. One of them was Jim, his plan. This really bothers me as someone who's actually in a long distance relationship right now. Jim's plan was like, yeah, if you live in DC, I'll take the last plane out of New York every Friday night and the first plane back every Monday morning. And it's like, okay, bud, you can fly round trip from New York to DC every weekend?
Fuck off, Mr.
Fuck
Rich Man.
off, dude. Come on. I really don't care about your long distance relationship now.
That like that is honestly that's the hugest one of the hugest stumbling blocks for what people I know who are in long distance relationships is it's not reasonable to travel that often. Of
No,
course
it's
you'd
not.
love
It's
to.
expensive and it takes up a lot of time that sometimes you need to spend on like errands and sitting.
And like eating a
Yeah,
burger.
eating a burger. Um, or sleeping in, So that was annoying. And
Yeah.
then there's this Maggie line where she was like, what'd she say? It's something like, we've only been dating for 3 days, and sure, we kissed on the plane and we've slept together every night since then. But like,
Wow.
I just don't know about this plan or whatever she says. And that was pretty yucky
That's a yucko line for sure.
to know that there's probably a guy at the keyboard going, and we slept together every night since then. All right, looks good.
Send it, print it. Aaron,
Tony, let's get that pizza.
Tony, what about that pizza? Aaron, you
I
buy
just
it.
wrote the Pulitzer Prize line.
Aaron Sorkin's like writes in the front of it, written by me. Aww. I don't think he takes that much credit for all of his work, but he does get the only writer's credit, and that still bothers me. Yeah, that stuff's all bad. There's so much more bad that I want to talk about in this episode. Though. It's a cavalcade.
Are you telling me we finally don't have to talk about Jim and Maggie ever again?
I mean, we did it. We talked
God.
about Jim and Maggie all the way.
Oh, I felt a weight lift from my chest.
I'm actually really glad that this is the last episode that we get to discuss because the previous episode is like legitimately made me very depressed that evening after talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was talking to some other friends on a voice call and I was just like sad and just like angry.
Oh, I'm sorry, dude.
No, it's not your fault. The show's terrible. It sucks. It's not at all like I love discussing it, but then this is just like, oh, this is just a mess. This is just a mess. Nobody had any idea what they were doing.
There is an innocence to this because it's so self-contained and so up its own ass about its characters that there are no like political ramifications to it. Whereas
there's no news.
Whereas the previous episode, there were these fraught conversations about like sexual assault and the other like the use of mass media and technology and
right.
Yeah.
And tracking people in the surveillance states. Yeah, all this stuff. And it's like, oh, oof. Now we just get to talk about how bad the funeral is.
Right. Right.
Stuff like when Will says something along the lines of, I want to stop smoking because I want to live a little bit longer. And all of like the women have the like badly written women tropey stereotype of being like, oh my God, congratulations. And then fucking Martin, the like intern idiot boy who has never gotten any character work because he doesn't need it. He's just a joke. Is like, guys, I don't get it, guys. And then everyone walks away being like, oh my God, Will, what's the name gonna be? Guys, I don't get the joke. And like, I don't know. It's just a bad goof.
Yeah, whatever.
That just uses like Tess and Kendra and the other person to just be like, oh,
to
look.
just be like women. Yeah.
Yeah, like women know. They get it. She's
Right.
prego. Yeah. Prego my ego, you know what I'm saying?
Prego my ego for sure. Maybe a listener caught this too. I guess this was a joke, but Mackenzie is 7 weeks pregnant. And Will was in jail for 52 days, which is longer than 7 weeks.
Uh-huh.
And he said something like, she's like, oh, there's a 40% chance it's yours, which maybe that was a joke. And then he's like, oh, it's definitely not mine, but I'm going to raise it anyway. And I mean, that was probably banter, I guess, right?
I think that's banter, because who else is it going to be?
I don't know. I don't know.
I think it's just a weird line.
I understand what they were going for there.
I think it's almost like they are implying that it would be funny if we had a who's the daddy plot, but no, of course we know it's you. Like, of course.
Yeah, I guess that's.
Since she broke up with Dan Schneider or whatever the other dude's name was in like season 1.
I like that guy.
He was all right. And since she broke up with him, she has not had a sexual relationships with anybody since then. I don't think. Also, I have a note here. Shout outs to Jim in the past with Goatee Jim drinking Amstel Light, which is the beer that I have in my fridge right now. So like,
Mhm.
I'm sorry. I know Amstel Light's a bad beer. I know. I can't afford better beer right now. Or if I could, I would just use it to buy like a video game. Like, let's be good. Alcohol is expensive. I go to a restaurant and I'm like, I just want to try a new beer, and it's like $10
Yeah, dude.
to like taste a new beer. Just to like look at a picture of a new beer, they're like, that'll be $5.50, and it's like, come on. It's plus tax, whatever.
Being in your 50s kind of old for being a dad.
Yes.
A new dad. I mean, don't knock it till you try it, I guess. I'm just saying. I wonder what percentage of new dads out there are that age.
In their 50s.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because, I mean, he's like not extremely healthy for his 50s. We know from the whole psychiatrist plot that he's not healthy. But, I mean, he says he's going to quit smoking and he's trying to develop better habits. And Mackenzie, like, seems to be in decent shape. So, like, the health negatives of being in your 50s don't seem to be an issue.
Yeah.
But obviously, like, raising a child and having all of your child's friends, parents, be like in their 30s might be a little awkward, like when meeting people. But
Sure.
they're also like news celebrities, so I'm sure they have other problems with meeting parents.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of awkward things, the final Neil scene is really bad.
The final, which
Or
one's
the last Neil scene that I can remember is all of the nerdy interns are like doing nerd stuff, and then all of their computers blue screen of death at the same time.
Fuck.
Which which just cuts to what happened. They all shut down, and then Neil's like, "That was me. I put a thing on your computer." Like, it's just like written by a guy who's never looked at a computer before, and Neil just goes, "I put a thing on your computer that made all of your computers crash at the same time." And he like spins like the USB stick on his finger, like, "What's up, fuckers? I'm here now. I'm the boss. You're gonna rebuild the whole website."
Why would you ever program that? In what world is that ever the thing that you need to be able to do? You know what I mean? Like walk in the room and make all the computers crash. There's no practical purpose to that whatsoever.
No benefit of it other than to show off, which is what Neil is doing. But it just felt like it was written by a really old person who was like, "All right, how do we like send off Neil? Like, well, he does like a cool hacking thing, which kind of plays into his like getting the hacker season 3, guys. We did it."
It really sucks that Neil comes back and he doesn't get to interact with any of the characters, other characters.
He gets a gag and then he leaves.
None of them acknowledge, like, "Hey, man, you were almost like arrested forever, and you were in Venezuela
on extradition laws." Like,
you good, bro? What's up?
You good? You need anything? You fled the country. You good?
How you doing, man?
Guys, it's okay. I'm blue screen of deathing all these computers. It's chill.
It's okay. We just have to rebuild the website.
I took down our website so that we can rebuild it. Like, stop. At this point, my notes are just, "No, please stop. Let it end. Here we go." All in caps.
Also, this is a fundamental misunderstanding of how many people it takes to build and run a website.
Yeah, it's not 5 nerds.
Yeah, well, it's not just one guy either. It used to just be Neil. And you're telling me ACN is one of the 4 big news networks? And it's like a guy running their website?
Like a 21-year-old? Like, yeah.
That's something that we've never really thought about very much, but that is fucking
He
ridiculous.
built the website. He's the only website guy they have.
And he spends half his time editing people's Wikipedia pages.
Doing their, like, dirty laundry internet work. Yeah, that's his real job. In the meantime, well, I mean, maybe he just, like, runs a WordPress blog. Maybe that's fine.
But then you're telling me that, like, if we're to believe that ACN, I guess, like, what are the other things that it's up against? Like, CNN? Is that what we're led to believe?
The more important question is, like, what is the ACN website? Like, what does it even do? Because if it's just, like, a blog, then, like, yeah, Neil can run that. But he runs the Twitter account. We know that.
What I'm saying, though, is there's no way that in 2013, something like a CNN, maybe they're not CNN because it's not, like, all day, whatever. I don't know.
Right.
Maybe it's more like ABC News or something.
Or CBS News, yeah, sure.
CBS News. But there's no way in 2013 that something like CBS News just has a blog where somebody's blogging.
Well, because he has the Twitter. There's a forum on the website, which already that's like requires moderation and web engineers and stuff to help with a forum.
Yeah.
Like all of that takes so much work and so much talent, and they're just like, oh, we gave it to the Indian guy. He does the website stuff. Like maybe there's an IT team besides Neil, but he's the IT head.
Mm-hmm.
And we just don't know about the rest of them. I don't know.
guess.
They never really are clear about how big specifically the ACN staff is.
That's true.
They just show really big rooms full of people, but they all look like they're doing news shit. They don't look like they're running a website. It's not clear.
That's fair. I will say, I when Neil showed up again, I felt good inside.
Dude,
I
of
was
course.
Neil. There's our boy.
There's
Welcome back.
This whole episode, this whole show, but especially this whole episode serves to make you feel good and go, oh, yeah, that's the moment I wanted to see. Like the Hallmark, like cutesy moment, or like the satisfying, like payoff for 3 seasons of plot, whatever. And sometimes that works, and sometimes you look a little bit further than that, and it's just really dumb.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was what the Neil thing was like, yeah, Neil's here. Wait, why is he crashing computers? Neil, what are you doing? Stop.
Yeah.
Speaking, okay, the ultimate saccharine scene of the whole show.
Yeah.
The garage scene.
In the garage.
This is the cheesiest scene on the entire newsroom.
Holy crap, dude. It was
Hey,
a lot.
this is my cousin Bo. He's in a band. He's always in the garage. He's in a band. So if I remember correctly, the order of events is Charlie's grandson is chilling in the garage here in my garage during the funeral, and Will comes up to him insisting he's like, "Hey, my grandfather died today." He's like, "Yeah, I'll one up you. My best friend died today."
So that's a pretty fun line with the kids at the funeral. No, I'm not being sarcastic. I think that's nice.
Okay.
I think that's nice.
It is nice. I mean, the kid doesn't understand the implications of that, but that's the point. Is he's just like, what?
The kid laughs. No, he laughs. He thinks
No, he
it's
gets
funny.
it. Okay.
Yeah,
You think?
it.
Okay. But he's like, all right, what do you like to do, kid? And he's like, oh, I like my brother's in a band. And he's like, all right, I used to play in a band. I gotta. You have a guitar? Get Jim in here. Jim, come over here. Check this guy out. Check me out. Let's jam together.
It's worse than that, though. You're making it sound better than it is. He goes to the garage, and first of all, this kid is first mentioned by Charlie in this episode in a flashback where he talks about, oh man, my grandson, he can play any instrument. It's amazing. That kid's freaking awesome. Doesn't matter. You give that kid a piccolo, you give that kid a lute, you give him an ocarina. Oh man, that kid.
You give him Majora's Mask, he can play it.
So we learn about him in this episode. Then Will talks to him and is like, "Hey, do you want to do some jamming?" The kid says, "Sure. Let me just get out my upright bass for our acoustic jam
that I just keep handy."
And Will's like, "I know a song that you like. I'm remembering it from a flashback from this episode." Just kind of starts playing it. It's fine. It's a little weird. It's not the first time that we've seen Will playing the guitar. It's self-serving, but at this point in the episode, okay, just fuck me up. Newsroom, it's fine.
Just let it die.
It's okay. And then out of nowhere, it's guitar solo time or whatever, and an ADR Will voice goes, "Jim Harper's here." And then
super ADR Will voice, by the way.
And then Jim's just there playing along and
his guitar.
harmonizing and knows the song, and it's so cheesy.
Like you see stuff like this joke of like, and this guy's here, and then they play a perfectly like done song where their voices sound way better than they actually do, and all this stuff. You see that in like bad 90s sitcoms or like a musical or something like that.
Yeah, or like just a parody of whatever this is. Also.
Yeah, or like an SNL sketch, exactly. You don't see that in a theoretically serious dramatic show about doing the news. Like, it's badly dubbed. It's not a great song. It's so saccharine and corny, and it feels it's still the same yucky emotion in my stomach that Shenandoah playing over Charlie dying felt like.
I think
that's
worse. I still think that's the worst.
I mean, it is. That one's the more like. That one's more outwardly offensive, but this one's still just like, oh God, you're doing this. Like, stop doing this, please.
Mm-hmm.
I just was like suffering through it.
Yeah.
Oh my God, and it just doesn't let up from here. Like the rest of the episode is just like people professing their love for each other and suggesting all this stuff, and then finally we get the one scene I wanted out of this finale, which is, I think this is the last thing. We're back at the newsroom. We're like a couple years later, I think, or a year later.
Well, before we do that, I just want
Yeah.
to touch on Will's eulogy briefly.
Oh yeah.
Because the whole episode, every character's like, Will, I thought you were going to give a eulogy. I thought you're the best person at talking I've ever met, and I love you, and I think that you're a genius, and I thought you were going to give the eulogy. Huh.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's so weird. And he finally does, and it's not good.
No.
It's not that good. And it ends with him saying, "You were a man, Charlie. You were a great big man."
The fucking funniest line.
God, it's so bad.
You're a great big man.
Because it harkens back to that fraught line in the pilot where Will's saying we used to be led by men, by great men, amazing men.
And now he's saying that Charlie was one of those guys.
Yeah, and Charlie, you were one of those guys.
But also the wording of a great big man is so funny to me. I'll never get over it.
It's ridiculously
I'm
worded.
a huge being. Charlie, you were 11 feet tall and you crushed buildings with your fingertips.
Just
Charlie,
offensively bad.
Yeah.
And then I was also really bothered by what they did with Don and Sloan in this episode, where Don and Sloan were like, Will, listen. Actually, it was her fault that he died. No, it was your fault that he died.
It's good.
Not funny. It's not funny at all. And normal people would not act this way. It's not funny.
Stop saying this, you guys.
It made me upset.
Yeah, I mean, Don and Sloan are terrible people, though. They were never put out to press shown to be good people.
Up. You shut your mouth.
I'm sorry.
They are the only good characters on the show.
I mean, we'll talk about our faves later, but like they aren't supposed to be a little bit tactless, I think.
Tactless, but good people.
Fundamentally, this show needs you to think everyone is at their core a good person. But for them to make jokes about, like, she killed him is a nasty.
Yeah.
He's a great big man.
Yeah, so the final scene. Sorry, go ahead.
No, well, we've also just been making jokes throughout the show about how funny it is the way that Will says things like coke and joke.
Yeah.
And there's like a couple more of those in this episode that I forgot to mention. I can't remember any of them off the top of my head, but just Will like leans harder and harder into that. Oh, I think he says like, I haven't been enjoying our post-show drinks.
Yeah, that was the first one, I think.
Yeah, it's like, oh my God, Will.
Oh no, you're right. It is this one. It's this one.
That is this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that never stopped being funny. I'll never understand where that accent was supposed to come from. I mean, he's a guy from Nebraska.
I think that's just Jeff Daniels.
I've heard Jeff Daniels speak. He doesn't always sound, maybe. Oh, we'll never know. It's a really specific accent. People have heard it. But yeah, we get to this final scene. I think it's several months, if not a year later. The news continues to happen. I would have loved this final scene if we got more of the like Mackenzie or somebody or Dawn, or Jim rather, in Will's ear and like talking about what they're going to report. But instead they opt for it being like a generic insert news item here where they don't say anything about what the story is. It's just the prep. It's the quiet of the the control room turning on. It's like it's handled okay. Of like, oh, the news goes on and like all of these like artifacts of an old era are still here, and the people that we love are still here, and everyone's in different positions and wearing different hats, but we're all still the same people. And another day goes by and it's time for us to keep doing the news. Like things don't change that much, which is it's something I think it kind of works as the final moment of the show.
Two fundamental problems with it.
Go for it.
Like philosophically, politically speaking, the first is that it would seem that this show was trying to position itself as showing a group of characters who are committed to something of a journalism that's been lost in the television era.
Right.
And yet, by the end of this just looks like totally milquetoast TV news B-roll.
Walter Cronkite. Right.
Like it doesn't look any different or feel any different than the things that they're claiming to be different from, you know? And so the show does not radically restructure the way that news is disseminated or the way that it's put together. In fact, in some ways, it fetishizes it the way that it already exists.
We still got a guy behind a desk. We still have him saying, like, looking to the camera. We got the countdown. We got the theme music. Like, it's all the way the news has always been done.
It's still this like top-down, elite-controlled system of information that is closely tied with politicians and like kind of interdependent on them. So that's gross. And then the other thing that's gross about it to me is that ultimately what this show is saying, and this ties into what I really detest about the constant comparisons to Don Quixote. Ultimately, the message of the show seems to be the thing that matters more than anything else is having ideals. It doesn't matter if in practice you act upon those ideals. It doesn't matter if you succeed. It doesn't matter if you always even follow your ideals. The only thing that matters is that you claim to have them.
Mm-hmm.
That's ultimately what this show is saying. Because they talk about the mission to civilize, comparing to Don Quixote, knowing that Don Quixote as a character is a madman who's trying to revive knightly chivalry in a world where it doesn't make sense. And they're seeing his figure as this like tragic hero to model themselves after. But then what they're saying is we're going to try to revive this old philosophy of doing things because it is dignified, not because it is actually effective or purposeful.
It undoes season 3 because season 3 is so much of it is about like, oh, we're going to challenge that notion of what the news is supposed to be.
Season 3 is like, we went to fucking jail.
We went to jail for doing this. For
season 2 is like, season 1 is like, we're trying. Okay. We do okay. We do not okay. Season 2 is like, we fucked up. And season 3 is, we went to jail. And now the end of the show is like, didn't they do a great job? Because they had ideals.
Honestly, high fives all around. We all kind of crushed it.
It's like, no, they did not do a good job.
This final shot, despite all of the crime, all of the like lives hurt, and literally lives lost between like the source and the other people that have been hurt by their stories, Will still looks to the camera and says, "Good evening," and we cut to black on him doing the news for another night.
Yeah.
And it's like nothing, everything has changed, and yet literally nothing has changed.
And again, that ending is an ending that must have been written when the pilot was written. I have to believe that. Because there is something about it that feels like it should work. And I think in a better version of this show, that ending would have been, amazing.
Yeah.
But in this show, no.
You did not build to this ending.
You did not build to that ending.
No. If anything, I would have loved even like an ending where we are taking the advice of Lucas Pruitt and we are incorporating the citizen journalism and reflecting on that and talking about that. And we have a different person in the front of the camera maybe. And like everybody is working hard to appeal to the modern era while maintaining integrity. But no, it's just, no, we still do the news the way we used to. Literally nothing changed. We're the same.
Yeah.
We worked really hard against this, literally committed multiple crimes to get here. But whatever, it's the news. It's the news. That's what I got, man.
Yeah, me too.
I have 2 questions.
Okay.
Both from Twitter, from listeners of the show. I put out a last-minute call. I said we're recording ChatzRoom in about an hour. Coincidentally, that was about 2 hours ago. And I said, if you have any questions or comments about the newsroom that you want us to answer, throw them at us because we already recorded the news bag. And I'm going to read the second one we got first because the last one is a good capper.
Okay.
This one is actually from a season 1 guest and friend of the podcast, Frankie. They say, this is probably too late, but what is one minor character that you wish the show had spent more time with? I mean, Martin is good.
No. No.
My gut reaction was to say Gary, but they got Gary time and ruined it horribly, so no.
Honestly,
Uh,
I think this show in some ways would have been better served a not by spending more time on minor characters, but by entirely shifting where our point of view is situated.
yeah.
Like, why isn't Maggie the point of view character for the audience? Why is Will the protagonist and not Maggie?
Why does Jim fail his way upward into an executive producer role?
Yeah. It's just, I think ultimately part of the problem with this show is it's an issue of perspective, and it's taking the perspective of the sort of rich white male in a position of power, top down view. I am going to instruct society on how to be better,
Hmm.
and that's a lot of what's wrong with it. So any emphasis that we can place on another character's perspective that could complicate that, I think, is worthy of doing. So maybe it's probably somebody who's like an intern or works there, or it's a minor character who, even like any outside world perspective on the effect that their show's having, like people who are working in Washington who are watching the
Fucking
show, I guess.
Maggie's roommate.
Maggie's roommate. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, let me see what it's like to not be a rich white person that lives in New York City and works at a news station. Like, give me somebody out completely outside of that bubble and tell me how they see this. I think that would give the show so much more believability and grounded in such an actual reality that it's
Yeah.
trying to
Why?
couch itself in.
Why? This is a big question now. Why did we never see anybody watching the news on this show?
Huh? Because
We never saw somebody watching this show.
we talk so much about the viewer and viewer statistics and how to appeal to the way that the people watch the news in 2013, but we never saw somebody watch the news in 2013. Hmm. That's something to chew on, I think.
Yeah.
We got a second question, or this is actually the first one we got. And this one comes from Cassidy, and she says, it's a two-parter. It says, if you could turn back time, would you choose to do a different series? And her second question is, what is your favorite character progression of the series? And I know both of us, our knee-jerk reaction to the first question is like, of course not. We are both firm believers in the nothing you can, nothing you can change you would do differently most of the time.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
I would
I
definitely
think
not
we're
do a different
both
thing.
of the life mindset of it's not productive to try to turn back time.
Right.
It's more productive to try to turn the time that you've spent into something worthwhile.
Yeah, I saw Steins Gate. I know how it goes.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. And I think
Yeah.
we picked this show for good reasons. It was a show with live action people in it, which is different from Avatar's show in the real world. It was a genre that we haven't tackled yet. Political, which is something we haven't done. We kind of hit the sci-fi, we hit the sort of coming of age, we hit the magical, and then we wanted to do the political because it was something different. And I think it's provoked interesting discussion between the two of us. It certainly helped me to think about the ways in which I am underwhelmed by current establishments and institutions and the way that I want to see those institutions change. It's
Yeah.
actually, even though it's not a good show as a show, it has gotten me to try to think a lot more critically about my political perspective. So, in that way, it's been a positive experience for me watching it. It's just that it's not good, but I think you can get a lot of value out of something that is bad. The thing that's nice about the newsroom and about Sorkin in general is, and I think I said this maybe in the first half, is that he does have ideals. He does
Yeah.
theoretically have things that he wants, and he is trying to make something that's optimistic, even if we debate whether or not it actually is optimistic.
Right.
And so it's because of his kind of open-hearted optimism failing that I think we're able to get value out of this show.
Yeah, I did. We definitely had long conversations between the Avatar show and this one about like what is the value of us discussing this, and I told you early on, I was like, this show for large swaths of it is kind of terrible,
Yeah.
it's also going to make some of the best discussion that we've ever had. And it did. We had probably my in my top 10 guest episodes we've ever done, which isn't saying much because we've probably done like 10 guest episodes. But with Frankie and Ryan, like those are amazing episodes. We've had people on with so much wisdom and experience to talk about these things that apply to our everyday lives. Like there was no better opportunity for us to talk about the political climate than to talk about the newsroom. This is like the exact show to accomplish what we wanted when we set out to do this, and what I wanted when I chose it for us.
Yeah, I think ultimately the drive of the show that we're doing here is we are watching television in an age where people shotgun TV shows where they just watch as much of it as they can at once. We're intentionally slowing that process down and taking it 2 episodes at a time because we want to examine, are we getting something from putting ourselves in front of a TV screen? You know? Are we actually, as human beings, spending that time of our lives productively? Or is it, is it meaningful to us? Is it literary in a way that we can discuss and apply to our real lives in the way that we see the world? And, a book doesn't have to be good for you to think thoughts about it.
Right.
And I think the same is true about a TV show. Now, there are ways in which a TV show could be bad that are not literary or helpful. I'm trying to think of a TV show that's a good example.
You mean just like popcorn television?
Yeah, just like if we watch The Big Bang Theory or something.
Or like Survivor, like just like a fun show, but like,
Sure.
What are we going to talk about? Like, what's the benefit of it?
Now we're going to get emails of people saying that Survivor should be our next show. But
there's a Survivor podcast out there. Go please listen to that one if it's good.
Yeah.
That doesn't fit the thing that we want to do, which is to like pull apart and, like you said, to take it slow and to enjoy the journey and to think about the small moments that people, when you're binging shows in this current culture, you don't even think about.
Yeah.
Like a good friend of ours, a mutual friend of Majan and I, like right before we started this, had watched all of the Newsroom in like a month. And I was like, what did you think of the show? And he goes, it's fine. Like, it's okay. And it's like, yeah, if you watch it that fast and you're like, eating popcorn or like looking at your phone during season 2, like, yeah, it's going to seem fine.
Right.
Of course it is, because like it's there and then it's gone. But when you have to sit down and turn the microphones on and do a clap and sync the audio and say, hey, it's time for us to now talk about this show, you are fundamentally examining it completely differently from the way that people watch TV. And I think that's valuable.
And you're putting yourself in the perspective of TV shows are really hard to make. There are so many people that need to agree on what something's going to look like and need to agree on how it's executed in order for a TV show to happen. It is the kind of creative product that begs for people to take time with it and pick it apart because so much effort and work time is put into creating an hour of television. So that's also, a reason that we want to do these analyses. And I think in the process of wanting to understand the creative process of television making, it's important to sometimes watch shows that are not very good, because that helps us to understand how that creative process can break down and how an idea can go from something that made sense on paper to something that does not work in practice. I think that's a worthy idea to be thinking about, just as much as it's worthy to be thinking about what is it that makes things work. When and how does television work in a way that feels like it's working for us instead of against us?
And I want to conclude by saying it's really easy to criticize this type of show and say, the people who made the Newsroom put hundreds of hours of blood, sweat, and tears into it and made a show and did their best, and then these like nerds in their bedrooms are just like shitting on it. And I don't think you can make that criticism of us specifically, because we're not trying to do a negative show. We're not trying to, like, people I before have recommended we like continue to watch bad shows, and we don't want to do that. We don't want to watch shows to dunk on them. It's not fun. It is not productive to tell you this is why this show is. It's a little bit fun to do in your own time, but like
I think
I don't need to podcast that is what I want to say. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I think what's important is that we come to each episode hoping that it's good.
Yes.
Right? Like, we're not hoping that something's bad. we're hoping that it's good, and then it lets us down.
Yes. And I mean, I just realized also that Cassie, who sent this question in, is Frankie's co-host on their Leverage podcast.
That's
so hi,
awesome.
thank you. Rock on.
Go
People
listen.
should listen to
Yeah.
Let's Steal a Cast. Good podcast. But it's we are doing this for the benefit of us and for the benefit of hopefully somebody working on the show listens to this. Maybe they're like, oh, like I learned something, or I think it's really interesting the perspective that they had on our show, and maybe they missed the mark. Like I don't want people to think that we're just like dunking on the thing that they like. It's not true, and that's not the show that we're trying to make.
Yeah, and our perspectives and our arguments are always open to criticism and always open to people disagreeing with us. I'd like to think that we welcome that sort of discourse,
Of course, we will. That's why we have an email. We plug an email address at the end of every show.
So yeah, I don't want people to walk away from this thinking like, oh, Alan Magellan picked a show and they are hating their life every single day, because that's not true. We had a good time. We learned a lot. Hope that you did too, and hope that you're thinking about things that you haven't thought about before, or thinking about the show in a way that you hadn't thought about it before, because that's what happens when you apply scrutiny to something. You are going to see its value and you're going to see its faults, and not everything has an equal amount of values and faults. Some things are more valuable than they are faulty, and some things are more faulty than they are valuable, and sometimes faults are valuable. All that stuff is true.
Exactly.
So that's what it comes down to.
I guess in terms of the question of would you do another show, like obviously not, but like sometimes watching this show and finishing a recording would make me at the end of the night a little bit melancholy, because like, man, this show sucks and I have to watch it again next week. But like, I'm recording it with a person who I've been friends with for over a decade, and I have no plans of stop doing that. We were doing this before we made it a podcast. We plan to continue after that. There's no show that we could do that I would honestly like hate it and wish we didn't do it. It's pretty much impossible.
Right, because it's just an excuse for us to talk and be buddies.
Right. The reason all of our recordings or all of our Skype calls are like 3 times as long as the recording is because this is also how sometimes as we get further apart physically, we communicate and hang out. Because that's friends.
And you know what? I'll go as far as to say ChatzRoom, my second favorite season that we've done after Skype Chats.
Wow.
Yeah, for real.
I'll give you that. And then to answer
the second part of the question,
yeah, what's your favorite character progression of the series?
Don.
Really?
Yeah, I love Don. Every moment that Don's on screen, except the sexual assault stuff, I loved. Yeah.
I want to say like Maggie, but Maggie went through so much rough stuff that it's hard to say that. I also want to say the intern, but she gets like 2 moments of character development to the point where it barely counts. So I guess I'll co-sign Dawn. That's like the closest thing to a character that gets good development. Yeah.
Yes.
I was never against Team Dawn. I think Dawn's great.
You were always against Team Dawn.
What?
Don't Dawn. Retcon Dawn. Louis Vuitton Dawn, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Thanks, Kanye West. Thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Was it a retcon that Mac and Charlie didn't know each other?
I think, you were asking me that, right? I don't know.
Because I thought they knew each other, and I thought Mac had worked with Will at ACN.
Mm-hmm.
But then Charlie said something about how they'd worked together at CNN. Except that doesn't make any sense, because Will was a lawyer, and then he was a legal correspondent at ACN, and then he was an anchor from 2001 onward.
Oh, you're right.
So it doesn't make any sense.
Is that an error? That could be a goof.
It could be a straight up goof. There could be goofing.
And we're not talking about the Gundam model. We could be talking about the Mickey Mouse character. Yeah. Who knows? Goofs. Speaking of goofing, it's time for us to goof on over to our next show.
To the other side.
Yes, to the Now We Die. So, dear listener, you may be wondering, Alan and John, you've been talking for almost 2 hours now. What are you going to do now that you're done gabbling about the newsroom? What's going to happen after the ChatzRoom? Are you going to still do another show? The answer is yes.
You better believe
maybe. Yeah, of course. We have, like you said, we have no reason to stop. So, for our summer season, our summer 2018 season, we, dear listener, oh my God, I'm so excited to announce it, are going to be watching. Magellan, hit them with the music. Pushing Daisies.
Yeah.
Not that show. Yes, it's the like season and a half long cult classic, right up our alley. Brian Fuller show run dramedy, kind of a comedy with some dramatic elements, but it's mostly a comedy from like 2007. It's called Pushing Daisies. It stars Lee Pace and Anna Friel. It's 22 episodes, which means that this podcast is going to run for about 11 weeks. If you're not interested in the show, get back to us in approximately 11 weeks, and we'll be on to our next one.
Yeah, so that'll be around June, July, like August.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's our summer show, so it'll be right towards the end of the summer.
Yeah.
We are really excited to watch this. We piloted a lot of shows to get to this decision.
We did, yeah.
This was the pilot that immediately grabbed both of us and was like, whoa, this show seems really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It has a lot of the shit that we like.
Yeah, I at least from my perspective, I like it when shows that we do are different than the show that we just did, because I think that kind of shakes us out of a rhythm and helps us find new topics of conversation. And this fits that because it seems like a show that's genuinely likable.
Right. It's a pleasant show.
Yeah. It has kind of magical, realistic elements to it. It's got a bit of a detective angle to it. And it's
gorgeously shot.
Gorgeous, very colorful. Got a narrator, so it's kind of fairy tale storybook. And it seems like it's a love story that won't be obnoxious.
Yeah.
So we're excited about it.
People like it a lot. Go ahead.
Well, I'll just say we think we have an idea for what we're going to cover after Pushing Daisies, but we're open to further suggestions over the next 3 months or so if there's something that you strongly want to have us watch. We hope that you'll follow us to this show. The one big consideration that we had to make when choosing this is that it's not easily streamable anywhere. It's not really on Netflix or Hulu or Amazon. That's where we usually check. So if you want to watch it with us, it's between you and your God exactly how you figure out how to do that.
Do your best.
Do your best. And let us know. I would actually really like to know if something not being streamable is a significant barrier to you listening, because that will inform shows that we pick in the future.
Right. We kind of have two we have like one we really, really want to do after this, and then another one that we'd be willing to do if people are like, no, you guys need to watch like easily streamable shows. Like I'm willing to talk about that.
Yeah.
But this is our little like dip into the world of shows that like what we're learning is most of the streaming TV services that people have, your Netflixes, your Amazons, and your Hulus, don't have like the specific stuff that Magellan and I really like for this show, which is like kind of late 90s, early 2000s cult classic, interesting genre shows.
Right. And Netflix seems like it's becoming less interested in holding on to those things because it's churning out more of its own original shows. Mm-hmm. So it seems like it's only going to be getting harder to find the kind of shows that we like streaming.
Right. Like we could do a Netflix show, obviously, but a lot of that stuff is still running, and we don't like to do stuff that's still airing. And
yeah, and there's just something magical about this period of television that is in the early days of the internet, where there can be a conversation that goes across episodes and people can have a narrative understanding of the progression of a show. And it's like kind of DVD period, but it's still not at the point where it's really easy to get shows immediately and watch all of them in a weekend.
Right. There is something magical about having to find this show.
I think, and about the show being made for an audience that is expected to be watching it on TV or catching up on DVD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the way that cult classics became popular was that the DVDs sold well. Right. Not that they were popular when they were on their network, because this show was on TV and did air on TV in 2007, but then it got canceled pretty early, and then Brian Fuller went on to make Hannibal, which is also apparently really good. But I don't know, I'm curious about it. I want to see what this show is like. I'm curious about any show from this era. I always think this stuff is interesting. It's like I said, a pretty short show. The first season is 9 episodes, and the second one is I think 13. So we'll be there and back before you know it. But
Yeah.
for next week, Magellan, if you don't mind, I'm actually just going to read us some summaries of these episodes.
Sure, go for it.
The first episode, season 1, episode 1, is called Pilot. Oh, like pie-let.
Mm-hmm.
I should also say the premise of this show, just briefly. Basically, a pie maker with the power to bring dead people back to life solves murder mysteries with his alive-again childhood sweetheart, a cynical private investigator, and a lovesick waitress. So, high concept. Pilot. Ned uses his unique powers to bring his childhood crush, Chuck, back to life and solve her murder. But he's also forced to keep his distance from her because if he touches her, she will be dead forever. Yeah, so it's kind of dark. It's actually got some dark stuff in it from what we've seen in that first episode. And then season 1, episode 2 is called Dummy. The team investigates an unusual car manufacturer after a murder victim claims that he was killed by a crash test dummy.
The other thing that's important to mention about why we chose this show is because neither of us have seen it.
Yes.
Which has not been true of any of our shows since we covered Farscape.
Yeah. We're finally back to the, like, people who have seen the show get to laugh at us being wrong from episode 1.
Right.
Even though, we've seen the first episode of this one, but nothing beyond that. So it's gonna be a good time. And I said next week earlier, I will actually just be real with you. We're gonna take a little bit of time off.
Yeah, probably
just 'cause we
probably
have
a week or so.
A week or two, yeah. Just because we have to prepare some things. I have to make new like podcast art and
my brother's graduating from college. All this.
John's brother's graduating from college.
Yeah.
I am finishing my semester also. Like life stuff is about to collide in it for the next couple of weeks. So, but we won't be radio silent. I'll stay on the Twitter if people want to talk about stuff and like collaborate on how to get this show, get a hold of it and stuff. So we'll still be there, you know. Chatspot@gmail.com will continue to be the home where you can send in comments and feedback. At Chatspot on Twitter, of course, is our Twitter feed. And Magellan, where can people find you on the online?
People can find me online on Twitter at JustAFluke. That's JUST. People can find me online on Twitter at JustAFluke. That's JUSTAPFLUKE. They can also listen to my other podcast, Adulthood, which is it. Listen, hey. It is around a year since the first episode of that released. I took some unscheduled time off, and I'm hoping that this 1 year whip around is going to get me to get back into it and do that show on a more regular basis. So,
yeah, we're gonna record a thing for it.
Yeah, we are. Alan, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Alan Ibrahim. That's spelled ALLENIBRAHIM. And I'm on 2 other podcasts. One is called The Garnet Wager, which is found on Scanline Media's website. That is a podcast where my friend Six and I watch the Korean game show The Genius and play games and talk about it. We're actually almost done with season 1, so if you want to hop on now, it's a good time. You can also listen to me on Fireside Friends, which is a monthly pop culture podcast found at firesidefriends.net, where Ryan and Katie, my other 2 friends, the 3 of us talk about pop culture, how it affects our lives and our friendship, and we bring every month a piece of media to discuss collaboratively in a fun and inviting way. That, dear listener, is going to do it for the Chats Room. Good night.